Thank you, Sam, and I want to welcome everybody to today's broadcast. This is Regulation E, and it's the A to Z, and I think who better than somebody with the initials A and Z to provide such an encompassing webinar, and I say that obviously with a smile on my face. Several things, some housekeeping things that I want to talk about before we get into the materials themselves. Number one, the materials are fairly lengthy. We're not going to go over every part of them today, but they are the cornerstone for what we are going to be going over. Primarily, what I mean by that is there are sections. We're going to talk about all of Regulation E. So we're going to talk about receipts and some statement and disclosure requirements, but one of the main questions I always get deals with claims. Everybody wants to know about claims. Now, I do a separate section, a separate webinar on claims, but this one today says that we're going to cover more than just the claim section. We're going to be looking at the basics of Reg E and a lot of the ins and outs because we are finding problems there. We see that there are actually enforcement actions. Some of them relate to overdrafts or to claims, but they're filed under Section 5 of the FTC Act, and they deal with the disclosures that the bank gives. So we are going to spend some time looking at the contents of the disclosures, why they have to be there, some techniques that you're going to be able to use to meet the regulatory requirements, and techniques to ensure that you avoid violating the technical requirements of Regulation E. But again, one of the things that we come down to is claims. People always want to ask about claims. So we're going to talk a little bit about things like gift cards and payroll cards and remittance rules, but there are separate webinars on those topics, and they often have a limited appeal. So for that reason, we're going to kind of gloss over them, but you've got pretty detailed resource materials to put onto your bookshelf and to use as reference materials for tomorrow and in the future for a good period of time, as we don't have any real significant changes pending in Regulation E. So the materials are what you need to be going by. However, the slides do have a lot of graphic items in there, such as depictions of skimming, and how we'll talk about how skimming can happen. And that relates to largely claims, but bankers, and for lack of a better term, bankers' ignorance when they say, oh, well, if you had the card on you, then you must have done these transactions, your claim's denied, period, end of paragraph. And you can't do that. Bankers, for some reason, don't understand that skimming happens. So I do have a lot of slides that are going to emphasize that. So there will be times that you can look at your materials, but look up on your screen, because there'll be times that we're going to have graphics that are going to show skimming. We're going to show tools on how to resolve some claim issues. So those are going to be some things that are coming. Now, real quickly, with the materials that you downloaded, I want to kind of give you a brief overview of some of the items that you had in Word format so that you can adjust them according to taste. But one of the documents that you have is titled at the top, it says EFT Unauthorized Withdrawal Workflow Form. This essentially is a two-page document, and if you're hopefully you've found this in your materials already, or take a couple of notes, or just listen and you'll be able to understand it when you get it. At the top of it, we essentially identify the transaction and why a person thinks something's wrong with it. Then there's a notice date, and when we talk about the claims in a few minutes, you're going to find that you've got essentially 4 different scenarios for claims. And these forms, you've got 2 columns in the center of each of the 2 pages. The first one is a standard 10-day investigation. The second one is a standard 45-day investigation. Then the second page has a new account exception with a 90-day period for investigation and a point-of-sale foreign 90-day investigation. The reason that I put these into 4 different columns, and it can be on one form, one page, you use both sides of the page, and you'll be able to follow along whether you are auditing your claims personnel, whether you are doing quality control checks or have somebody else doing quality control checks on Regulation E, or whether you give this to your claims investigator and say, here, you can use this form because some of the things that it's going to allow you to do is put down the date that you got notice, which type of scenario you're going to follow on your claims, what your trigger dates are. And the trigger dates essentially is the latest. I know that I have to resolve this claim by X date. So in order to get to that date, I also have to know how much I'm going to reimburse this person. Are there fees to being reimbursed or interest? When do those reimbursements have to be made? What letters have to go out? So that's what that form does, is it helps you in any of those facets, auditing, quality control, or the actual claims investigation. It's a great document to follow and to put into your file. You can use it electronically. You can use it on printed if you want to, whatever's going to meet your needs. But it's a good tool to be able to follow to avoid making errors on Reg E claims. Then there is a document called an error report, and it's titled at the top. It says Sample EFT Error Report. And here again, we get down to finite times when a customer says, hey, bank, I lost my ATM card, and by the way, I had my PIN number written on it. And you can cuss and discuss, you're writing your PIN number on the card all day long. It's not going to increase that person's liability. We're going to look at that rule coming up. But when they tell you, I have lost my card, the burden is now on you. Any transactions that happen by use of that card after you've been notified are completely 100% on you because you've had the ability to stop the functionality of that card. I call it putting it on a hot status, where that card's going to be reclaimed and it's not going to be able to be used. As soon as that consumer says, I lost my card, boom, the liability is on you. So that's why we have this sample EFT error report. There's two versions that you have to help you walk through. When did we receive notice? When did the debits happen? How much was taken out? Then you've got a Q&A session where you can discuss it with the consumer, or you can have them fill it out. When did you realize of the loss or theft of your device? When did you notify the bank? Has anyone else had your card, et cetera, et cetera? And then there's even a section where you can have the customer statement, and then the customer can sign and date it. I call it an affidavit. It's not a necessarily sworn statement that's going to be submitted. It does have language such as signing an affidavit containing false information as a criminal offense. Do I have citations? No. Do I have the legal ability to tell you here's where this is a problem in your particular state or municipality? The answer is no. Take a look at that language, determine, am I comfortable with that being there? Do I want to have my lawyer review it? That's up to you. I'm not trying to use it as a scare tactic for a consumer. I'm simply using based on information that I've had. Am I going to sue somebody or have them incarcerated because of this? That's not going to happen. But at the same time, I want people to understand that this is a serious issue because so many times somebody will place a claim because my buddy placed a claim, somebody took money out of his account, and you guys gave him back $150. Well, I need $150. So I'm going to make a claim, too, thinking that it's no big deal because the money just comes from money heaven, I guess, not realizing that it comes from your bank and it impacts your earnings and the income that your bank has and is able to pass on to consumers, employees, et cetera. So you've got all the information there, so you're going to be able to process that claim. Then you have another one that says sample EFT notice of error claim form, and it's very similar. It's simply the same thing with a different flavor. It's got information to be completed by the consumer. Doesn't have as many checklist-type questions. The second one doesn't, but it's going to depend on which you want to use. And then we have some investigation letters. And in the investigation letters, at the top of each letter, these are meant to be either where you're going to use a database to fill them in, or you're just going to look for, we're going to do this manually. We don't do that many claims. We're going to look for the greater than, less than signs. And we're simply going to fill in on date, and we're going to put in the date that you filed your claim, et cetera, et cetera. But the letters, you have a provisional credit letter, which is going to say, you filed your claim, we haven't resolved it within 10 days, within the 10-day period. We're going to go longer, so we're going to give you a provisional credit, and explains the terms of the provisional credit. The second letter says,